нашиот денешен главен говорник ни доаѓа од Шкотска. Тој е наградуван социјален предприемач, консултант, писател и мотивацијски говорник на теми поврзани со улогата на бизнис заедницата во општеството. Тој верува во моќта на бизнисот да го промени светот, но многу повеќе ја истакнува важноста на поединецот во промената на бизнис светот. Дами и господа, ве молам за еден голем аплауз за господинот Гиб Буллох, основач на Accenture. One brief question before I leave you the floor. I know for sure that you spent some quality time here in Macedonia back in 2001. So my question is, what are the top 3 things that you praise our country for?
Благодаря много. Съм много шрекен, що да се вратам тук, в Македония. За жал, морам да спорвам английски язик сега, но привидувачка много изненаден, да. Благодаря. So I must continue in, can you hear me okay here? Yes. The 3 things I would say from Macedonia: 1, definitely the people, friendly people, the welcome I got was amazing. Number 2, I think the countryside is, and the nature reminded me of Scotland. It's very beautiful, especially in the autumn with the trees and the colours of the trees as I would drive down to Gostavar or to Ohrid. And 3, I would put that down to, I hope, progress, because I came back to Macedonia last year for the first time in many years. I did not recognize Skopje with all the new buildings and the bridges and things. But when you're living here, probably progress is very, very slow and you don't see the changes. But I saw the changes when I came back, having been here at a very difficult time in Macedonia's history, 2000 to 2001. So I notice a big change and I'm very optimistic for the future.
Thank you very much for your kind words.
Yes, thank you very much. It genuinely is great to be here. I hope that my Scottish accent is understandable for people who speak English, and hopefully for the translator as well, who's doing a great job to translate. My main presentation is going to be about the changes that are happening in terms of the role of business in society, which is why all of you are here today, which is very encouraging. But maybe before I start this presentation, I'll start with a bit of a story. And can I use this microphone here as well? Yeah, does this go on? Yeah, it's working. This gives me a chance to walk about out here. Yeah, I want to start with a story, and most good stories have a beginning and then a middle and an end. So at the moment I'm just going to give you the beginning of the story, which is Macedonia. I could give this other presentation in many different places around the world, but here this is special because it was Macedonia that changed my career and actually changed my life very significantly. I think for the better. I'm sure for the better. And people think that life, big things in life, are all about something significant, like a first child being born, or you get married, or a parent dies, or all of these big things in life. For me, it's the very small things, the seemingly insignificant things that can change who you are and what you are doing in your life. I was working in London in a very big consultancy company. It's now called Accenture. It was called Anderson Consulting at the time. It's like PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte's and PwC. It's a big company. Aha, thank you. We'll get to these slides in a minute, but this story doesn't need slides. It's about life. One day I was going to work and I read an article in a newspaper. It was the Financial Times, and I read that there was an NGO called VSO, which used to operate in Macedonia, and it said we need more business skills, business people to come and work in emerging markets and work in developing countries, whether it's Africa, Asia, and at the time, Eastern Europe. And I had been working in the rat race in London. I don't know how that translates, but the fast-paced business, money, nice restaurants, fast cars, business class flights. I had a very good life, but there was something missing in my life. And when I read this article, I realized that my skills might be able to be more relevant, not just to make companies more successful and make people more money, who already had a lot of money, but to actually be used for social purposes. And it was like an epiphany of some kind. And within 1 year, I found myself in Macedonia. I'll be honest, I did not know where Macedonia was when I was sent to Macedonia. I think it was somewhere between Greece, and then it was Albania, and then Bulgaria north. So this little country that I didn't know about, we had to say former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia then, now it's Macedonia. And I was working in this small enterprise support agency in the west of Macedonia. Maya was one of the junior staff there, and there was maybe 5 people in the office, young, bright, motivated people. And my job was to work with them, to teach them business planning, help small businesses get access to credit, run training programs on e-business, training women entrepreneurs. I was on a salary reduction of more than 90% from my salary in London. But I had never been more motivated, more happy in all my life than when I was here, and this is the truth. I discovered this drug. The drug was purpose. And I had intended to go back after doing my year. In fact, I came for 6 months, and then I said, after 6 months, I'm enjoying this so much, I want to stay longer. So I stayed another 6 months. And there was the tensions, the almost war going on, I suppose, in Tetovo. These memories are very, very vividly marked on my mind. And but I could see that actually, if we could lift people out of high unemployment, low wages, no hope, and try and give them jobs, create economic progress, then it's my hope, and I think the last few years have shown that actually people's living standards have gone up, and Macedonia, I think, is in a better place than it was now. Nothing is not perfect, I understand, but it's great to see how it has progressed. For me, I went back to the company, and I still had the drug in my system. I could not go back to my old life. I wanted to try and see whether I could go from one volunteer, me, to try to build a business inside this big business. A social business, a not-for-profit business, inside a for-profit business. And that's what became known as Accenture Development Partnerships. That became my career for many years. And I feel very, very fortunate and very lucky that I was able to be supported in the company I was in to do this and bring hundreds of people to have similar experiences to the experience that I had in Macedonia around the world. I'll come to telling you a bit more about that social business later on, but that's the first part of the story. There's more to the story going on. But let me come to the presentation, which is really the meat in the sandwich here. But you understand now why it's very special for me to be back speaking to an audience here 16 or 17 years on, and how proud I can feel when I see Maya standing up representing the EBRD from having been a young apprentice in this office. Progress can be made at an individual level, and it can be made at the national level as well. We have evidence here. I'll just stand to the side. Companies doing good. The rise of the fourth sector. I will explain this strange term, the fourth sector, in a minute. But let me start with a little bit of context on my presentation here. Now, you don't need me to tell you about some of the problems that there are in the world. You can watch CNN or the news or open your newspapers and you will see that there are plenty of challenges in the world. Big things such as climate change affects all of us. It affects Macedonia. It affects countries all around the world. Inequality and poverty as well. I see a lot of inequality here in Macedonia. Globally, I believe Oxfam came out with a report recently that said that there are 63 people in the world, 54 men and 9 women, who have more money than 3.6 billion, the poorest 3.6 billion on the planet. That's a shocking statistic for me. I don't think it is sustainable, not socially, not economically, not morally. We need to address these issues. And traditionally, we've turned to organizations like the United Nations to solve these problems. We've said, business has said, you know, it's nothing to do with us. We make our profit, we make goods, we serve customers. The problems, the social problems of the world, will get the United Nations to solve it. I'm not so sure that they will be able to solve it alone. Or we've turned and said, NGOs. Oxfam's one. I think Oxfam, I don't know whether they are still in Macedonia, they're more focused on poorer countries, but there are many NGOs still probably in Macedonia, many NGOs around the world. And often we've said the third sector, the non-profit sector will do it. Or we've said government, government should do it. Government, well, we've got leaders in government. Some are better than others. This is not a political speech, by the way, so you may love them or you may not, but I don't think that necessarily government on its own is going to solve the problem. I asked the question, maybe people like the business people in this room, working together with civil society and government people in this room, might be able to have a problem. But it needs to be a different kind of business. We need to balance. In English, I talk about the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. So we don't just have the 2 lenses of binoculars, but we have people, planet, and profit balanced. Perhaps with a 4th P. And it's back to this interesting word. It probably isn't a P in Macedonian. I don't know what is purpose in Macedonian. All right, it's not a P, but you get the idea. Purpose. There's a book recently came out talking about the purpose economy, and the fact that purpose might actually be almost the next industrial revolution. That we will see a revolution in business where purpose and profit and planet are balanced. I certainly believe that given business has grown hugely over the last few years, probably in Macedonia there are businesses have grown, but particularly globally, we now have enormous organizations that are many, many times the size of countries. And with that power comes responsibility. Here's just a map of the GDP of the world. Let me just stand to the side here. It won't surprise you as to think that the most powerful country in the world is the one that is currently governed by Mr. Trump. It's the far left. And then you have this long, long tail of countries down to 192. Do you know where Macedonia is in that list? Whereabouts? Halfway to the right? In 2016, it was 126. 126. Your economic GDP in Macedonia, I guess gross domestic product, the value of the economy, 10.9 million. There's the 100 poorest countries. If we look at actually the size of big global multinationals, the biggest 3 companies in the world have more economic impact than the 100 poorest countries in the world. Even Apple, and we've all got our iPhones, or many of us have our iPhones or our MacBooks. Apple would almost knock Switzerland out of the G20 as one company, with one board, with one CEO. That's enormous impact. And I put it to you, we can try and change democratic processes and vote in new governments, and that's very slow. But if we can get one company, or 3 companies, or 100 companies to actually change, even a small change, think of the impact we can have on society's challenges. Whether Macedonia is 126, or whether you're one of the larger countries, big companies can have an impact. Let me illustrate this by example. I want to hear a bit from the audience as well. I don't want this to be just one-way broadcast. I want to hear back from you. So I have a quiz here. I'm going to ask questions. Okay, because we're translating, some of you will read this, but I want to give an example of the size and scale of companies. How many litres of water does it take to make a single litre of Coca-Cola? Everybody has drunk Coca-Cola. I'll give you a clue. There's 4 choices. 3 litres, 33 litres, 53 litres, 253 litres. Put your hand up if you believe it is A. Answer A. Okay, that's the 3 litres. Answer B. 33 litres, a few more. Answer C. 53, probably more. And answer D, 253. Okay. Keep your hands up, D. Congratulations, Chistito. It is in fact 253 litres. Why does it take 253 litres to make 1 litre of Coca-Cola? Does anyone have an idea why that is? You can shout to Macedonian if you want. And Maya has to translate for me. No idea. I'll tell you. It's 3 litres to make the juice, in the production and the heat and the cooling. But you need 250 litres to grow the sugar to make the Coca-Cola sweet. So, 250, this was told to me by the head of the WWF, the NGO, the environment NGO. In Scotland, where I come from, we have lots of rain. It's no problem to have 253 litres to make Coke. If you're making Coca-Cola in India, it's a big problem. And my point is, look at this potential impact. If we can change that by 1%, 10%, 20%, it's a massive impact on water, and water is a very, very scarce resource around the world. I have another question, similar question. Nestle is in Macedonia, I am pretty sure. Nestle products. So my question, how many customers does Nestle serve in a single day? I can give you the choices, but does anyone want to guess before I give you the choices? Billions? Billions. Billions. Okay, I give you the choices, billions. Okay. Billions. Number A is 14 billion, B 1.4 billion, C 140 million, and D 14 million. So hand is up for A. 1. Okay, we have one brave man saying A. How many people are there on the planet? How many? Just over 7, actually. Okay. So everyone on the planet needs to eat or a Kit Kat, 2 Kit Kats a day, or okay, I'll give you a clue. It's a brave choice, but no, it's not that. It's good to be the odd one out, though. I think that's good. Sometimes you're always right. B, 1.4 billion. Quite a lot of people for 1.4 billion. That's like a quarter of the world's population every day. C, 140 million. Maybe more people for C. And D, 14 million. It's a bit small, 14 million. Well, the answer actually is B, 1.4 billion people. Well done for the Bs. There's no prizes yet. I will have a prize later, but there's no prizes. That's incredible, isn't it? Every single day, 1.4 billion people are buying a Nestle product. That could be water, that could be chocolate, that could be food, many things. Again, 1% change in a Nestle is worth many NGOs, much social impact, many government impacts, I would say. So business is absolutely huge. So just moving on. I believe that we are facing a crisis in the world. I don't want to depress you. I'm very much an optimist. But there is a crisis. And crisis, does anyone speak Chinese here? One person speaks. You're learning Chinese. 2 people are learning Chinese. Congratulations, that's fantastic. I am told that the Chinese word for crisis is in fact 2 pictures, 2 symbols. Danger and opportunity. And I think that's the way we need to look at this sustainability crisis. It is a danger, but it is also an opportunity. And I wonder whether some of these big dangers, these problems, access to energy, healthcare, disability, climate change, you name it, these big problems in the world could actually maybe be business opportunities in disguise. If we rethink what the purpose of business is, if we rethink the business models and the role of business in society, maybe we can actually have business solutions to these problems that we always thought were the government or the NGOs or the UN's problems. These are the new generation of business opportunities, I would argue. Have you heard of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations? In 2000, at the turn of when I was really here in Macedonia, there were the Millennium Development Goals, which were the goals for 2015. There were 8 goals then. Frankly, the world didn't actually achieve these goals by 2015. It was probably, they got some of the way there, but not far enough. So the UN decided to create some new goals that they hope they're going to achieve better by 2030. So in, what's that, probably 12 years we've got left, 12 or 13 years. There are now 17 goals, many indicators, and you can probably read what these goals are all around. They're about poverty, they're about education, they're about health, they're about peace, they're about the environment. There are 17 of these goals. But you know, there was a study that came out last January. And this study by the Business Commission for Sustainable Development, you can look it up on the web, it actually said that if business engages in these goals and helps to contribute towards these goals, it's in fact a massive opportunity of $13 trillion, not billion, but trillion dollars, which is what really I've been trying to say here. That's an opportunity for global businesses. I think it's an opportunity for national businesses here in Macedonia. It's an opportunity for social entrepreneurs. Just take energy as an obvious one. I was lucky when I came here, the weather was fantastic yesterday, but I'm told that Skopje is one of the most polluted cities now in the world. Yeah? That's not great for your own health, that's not great for your kids' health. And you've got sun how many days of the year? Like almost every day. So the opportunity for solar energy, microgrids, electricity grids. Do we need these big pylons all over the country, ugly pylons across your mountains, or can we have microgrids in different places? That's just one thing, but if we think differently, there are many, many ways that countries like Macedonia can actually create business opportunities from these challenges. And there are other ways as well. And this is what I wrote a report a few years ago that talked about how we create a convergence economy. By convergence, again, I don't know what the term is in Macedonia, it's a difficult word, but this is where the public and the private sectors and civil society, the third sector, come together to create something new. A fourth sector, a new sector, where social outcomes rather than profit is the name of the game. Where we have these new business models, hybrid business models, where it's almost like a marketplace for outcomes, and we can harness the power of the market for social good. That's my best example of a hybrid that's a car in this case. But if we apply this hybrid thinking to businesses, why don't we have, I don't know, a joint venture between a company and an NGO or a social enterprise? Why don't we have Amazon working with the likes of a Roche, which I know is in Macedonia, around logistics for getting medicines where they need to go in the world? What's Google, and what's Google's role? Is it just to help us do search or for maps? Or could that mapping technology be used in developing countries, for example, to address polio? Or when there's the next epidemic, such as Ebola? Mapping technology can be used, and what's the commercial model for that? We have to think this way, and not just in the traditional old ways of short-term profit, and create these new business models. What's driving this change? Why do I say this is possible today when it maybe wasn't possible yesterday? Well, I think there are three main drivers. One is this digital revolution technology. The second is new financing mechanisms. And the third is actually people. So the first one, I think you don't need me to explain to you the disruption, the change that is happening with digital technology all around the world. Every company, every industry, every individual is being dramatically impacted by these kind of things. The mobile phone, big data, analytics, it's making things possible that weren't even able to be dreamt of even a few years ago. We have quiz number 2 now, so be ready because there is a prize for this quiz. Because I want to illustrate the point that technology is enabling companies to do things that maybe was the role of governments and NGOs. What single word links the following social issues? Number 1, poverty in Kenya. Number 2, corruption in the police in Afghanistan. I think we all know about corruption even here, closer to home. But this is in Afghanistan. Corruption is across the world. West, east, north, south, corruption is everywhere. Obstetric fistula in Tanzania. For the men here, women maybe know what this is. For the men, it's a rather, it's a taboo subject. It's incontinence that follows childbirth for young girls who maybe have children very early. Quite easy to fix, but too often not solved. In Tanzania, in particular, it's a big problem, but it's a problem around the world. I'm looking for one word that connects these three things. Does anybody want to shout something out? I have a prize. And being Scottish people are known for their generosity. And they're also known for their whiskey. So my prize is whiskey. Yes, really, I have a prize of whiskey. So, for the person who either gets the answer right, or is the closest to the answer I'm looking for. Okay, please. Money? Could be, but no, not the right answer. Yes? People? Also, but not the right answer. Looking for something maybe more specific. Yes? Internet? Getting warmer? But no. Yes? Opportunity? I like the way you're thinking, but no, but I do agree that these are potentially business opportunities. So you're getting warm. Yes, please. The mobile phone is interesting. Mobile banking, interesting, okay. With help. The answer. I think someone's seen this presentation before. That's actually a real picture, by the way, that we took on one of our projects in Africa of Maasai warrior with a mobile phone that just shows you the pace of change. The answer I am looking for is Vodafone. One word. So congratulate, a round of applause for, actually, you were cheating slightly, so I'm going to give the whiskey. I have a bottle, no I don't have a bottle in my pocket. I have a bar of whiskey chocolate, there you are. Congratulations. That's fair trade whiskey chocolate. I used to actually have a small miniature of whiskey when I gave out the prize. And I did a presentation in America to some students. And the students were under 21 and I got into trouble for giving alcohol to under 21-year-old students. So it's now chocolate, but there you are. You can share maybe some of the chocolate with Vodafone here, but I think that was with a bit of help. I think you deserve that. But why Vodafone? Why Vodafone with these three things? I'm going back the way. Poverty in Kenya, you got it right. That was the mobile phone. Have people heard of M-Pesa? Basically, in Kenya, people were without bank accounts. They were unbanked, making a lot of money in the market, having to put this money under the bed or wherever they would hide it. Vodafone came up with an idea when they saw that people were using airtime as an alternative currency. They were cheating, I'll give you 60 minutes of time and you give me some chicken, I don't know, or vegetables. They then discovered it could be actually the bank account for people who didn't have phones. So why do we need to create banks and physical buildings? We can do this on the mobile phone. And now I think about 80% of the economy of Kenya goes over mobile phones. It's incredible how quickly that revolution took place. I like number 2, police corruption in Afghanistan. I'll tell you the answer. There was an equivalent of M-Pesa, this mobile money, was introduced by Vodafone's local operator in Afghanistan a few years ago. And the police decided to utilize it to pay the policemen. They would be paid on their mobile phone rather than getting cash. The police thought that they had been given a 30% pay rise overnight. They were very happy. Actually, they were just being paid their normal salary, the real salary, but without the corruption from the senior police to the next senior police to, you know what it goes like, Versky, I think it's called here. They take some of the money, and 30% was leaking into corruption. And I met the person who introduced this in Afghanistan. He said he had death threats from the people who were the corrupt people because they saw a huge amount of business going. Could we bring in something the same here in Macedonia, perhaps? And it's not just a Macedonian problem, it's a problem around the world. And then thirdly, on fistula. I mentioned that this is a topic that is, in Tanzania, it was certainly not talked about, taboo. And women were suffering in silence. The clinics that could do very simple operations to address this problem were empty, and they didn't know why. So Vodafone, or Vodafone's foundation, did some research, and it found out there was two problems. One was that women were not aware of the fact that they could have a simple operation, that this was possible. And so part of the power of the mobile phone is to actually make people aware they could share information between women across mobile phones to actually say, look, you can get an operation. It's available here. It doesn't take long. It's very simple. It will change your life. The second reason was it was very expensive for some people to travel to the clinics. So again, a mobile solution. Vodafone sent the money over the mobile phone so that people could get the taxi or the transportation to get to the hospital. And the numbers are incredible. I think there were less than 100 operations for fistula in about 2013, and by 2016 there were just almost 600 operations. 70% of them came over the mobile platform. So you can see, for one very simple health issue, that they were able to make a transformative difference. And I'm not here to promote Vodafone. I don't have shares in Vodafone. My dad is not in Vodafone. I'm just saying that Vodafone as a company has been able to do something very significant. What about telecom here? Is there a business I don't know if anyone is here from telecom, is there? Yes, okay. So I say to you, it might not be these things here in Macedonia, but what are the social issues that can be a business opportunity for you in telecom? Not just through your corporate responsibility arm where you're giving money away, but where is the business opportunity for you to use your technology around, I don't know, it could be an issue such as mental health, which is taboo also here, to share information between users. It could be many different things. So that's my point on Vodafone. Number two, the driver number two, is around financing. Traditionally, when I was in Macedonia, we would have grants coming from governments, like the UK government funded my project, you've got USAID, you've got philanthropy coming from foundations, and it's very separate. We give the money and we give it to projects that do the work over here. That is changing, and now we are starting to see that money, private capital, is being used to deliver public goods. We're seeing impact investing, the growth of impact investing. I see Ninko there, you're an expert in that area. You can educate people on impact investing. But this is capital that is looking for social returns. And I've got a couple of examples there. Danone has an investment fund which is investing in its supply chain and supporting small businesses in its supply chain. DSM is a Dutch micronutrients organisation. I know the ambassador knows them. Yes, we have a question.
I just want to mention that my company, Pharmachem, is a distributor of DSM.
Ah, great. Yeah. You're a distributor. And the name of the company is?
Pharmachem.
Pharmachem. Great. And that's around nutrition and micronutrients, yeah. They've got an investment fund that they've created with World Vision, the large NGO that is probably operating here. They've created an investment fund. Yeah. GSK, the pharmaceutical company, has got a joint venture with Barclays Bank around providing microfinance in Zambia to provide access to medicine. So there's new ways of bringing money and capital. I've got a little case study I want to tell you about, which just illustrates how investment, or we can look differently at how we provide investment. This is a paper I wrote with the Brookings Institute around education. And traditionally, in my country, Scotland, and probably traditionally in Macedonia, it's the same. We see education mostly as the government's job. So the government provides the schools and educates people, and maybe a very small number of lucky people get private education in private schools, and they pay a lot of money. And around the world, kids, anywhere really in any country, if you have enough money and you're lucky enough to have rich parents, you can get a good education. But I say everyone, every child, in Macedonia, in India, in Scotland, has the right to have a quality education given to them. I think it's a human right. So how do we rethink how we fund education? Should it just be the role of the government, or could we actually look at talent and look at people, at kids, as actually the economic drivers of the future? And that's what I did for India. I could bring this to a context of Macedonia as well, but India is going to provide 1/4 of all the world's talent by 2032, I believe. They will be Indian. That's just a fact of demographics. Oops, almost falling off the stage here. 1/4 of the world's talent will be Indian, but yet the Indian education system is one of the weakest in the world and underfunded. So we have a problem. It's not just a problem for India, it's a problem for this global economy in the world. So this paper tried to say, what if the child born tomorrow in India, too many of them will be malnourished, will not make it to their 5th birthday, will drop out of school. What if we could actually invest in these kids and see them as an investment opportunity? The same way we might invest in nice wine from Tigvasser and keep it for 20 years. What if in 20 years' time these kids were actually to be productive economic citizens with skills? And we looked at the numbers on this and actually discovered that India was losing 100 billion, that's 10 times the size of the Macedonian economy, was being lost in India because they were not getting their kids through school, there wasn't the money, there wasn't the policies, they were dropping out, or maybe they were dying of easily treatable diseases. And that's a problem for all of us. 100 billion. Now, if it was Saudi Arabia, and it was oil that was leaking, and it was 5.5% of the economy, you would fix the pipes. So we need to address this issue in India for all of us. And I put it to you, in India, it's children out of school, it's easily treatable diseases. That's maybe not the problem here in Macedonia, but I walked across the Stone Bridge, and I saw probably a Roma child, I don't know, maybe 7 years old, begging for money, playing a musical instrument. And it just made me think, how much would it cost us to make sure that that kid was in school, was staying in school, was learning in school? What is it we can do? And what would that be like for the Macedonian economy in 2030 if all of these other kids that I haven't seen were in school? There's an economic benefit, but it's not just down to the government to do this. I think even the private sector here and others could actually create the investment opportunity, and through things like social impact bonds, we can get that future value and create an investment opportunity today. There are new mechanisms that can do that. So that's education, and where there's a role for the private sector. And my last point here is around the people agenda, employees, as the third driver. Many of you in the private sector many of you in all sectors are talking about brain drain in Macedonia. I know that's a big problem. Some of your brightest and best people are leaving for opportunities. But it's a problem for companies also in the world. It is a big problem for companies to retain and attract talent. They're all looking for the same smart people. These people now, the millennials, 20-something, maybe up to early 30s, they want purpose. They want a career that allows them to feel that they are contributing in the world. When I started my career, I explained to you in my story that I just wanted a fast car and a lot of money, and that was good. It changed when I came to Macedonia, but now the kids are really wanting, young people, they really want careers with purpose. Unilever, the food company, and they make shampoos and washing powders, they were about number 80 of the most attractive companies to work for, until they got a new chief executive who created a strategy that was around purpose. And now Unilever, I think, is number 3 or 4 globally of the most attractive companies for employees to work for. Why? Because people could go to Unilever and believe that they were doing something that might be good for their careers, but also good for society. That's Unilever. Accenture, well, I told you that I worked in this company, Accenture. This is where I tell you about the organisation that I went back. So this is part 2 of the story. When I left Macedonia, I went back with an idea in my head that had been probably dreamt up in cold winter nights in Gostavar, thinking, what is the business model to bring bright people, smart people, to be able to provide their skills to countries and organisations where there's a need for these skills but where they don't traditionally have access. They can't afford PwC or Deloitte's or Accenture. And we came up with a model that was based on an investment between the employees, who gave up some of their salary, the company gave up profit. So Accenture was willing to say, if we're working with NGOs, we won't make profit. But we also got the NGOs to buy our services, which was the last bit. So we would charge money, but it was maybe 20% of the normal rate. So it was a different business model. We were turning the normal model upside down. And that allowed us to grow a business that over 10 years, for the 10 years since leaving Macedonia, we provided 250 million worth of services in over 80 countries around the world, involving hundreds and hundreds of Accenture's employees on half of their salary. And why? Why did the company do it? Because it was actually developing their leaders, their talent. People were more motivated. They were more likely to stay with the company. They were more engaged. So there has to be a business benefit. It can't just be, I didn't go to the company and say, here's a good thing to do. Here's an opportunity for some CSR or some philanthropy. I said, here is an opportunity for you to develop your leaders of tomorrow and attract the talent to come to this company, then go to one of the competitors' companies. My job was to try and make the business be not for loss as well as not for profit. We were a break-even business. I had the best job in the world. It was fantastic. Does that make sense? Any questions on that model so far before I go into the last bit of my story? That makes sense, hopefully. I know I do want to, I know we started a little bit late, but I do want to get on to questions. The last bit of the story is that things were going very well. The job that I dreamt of, the best job I could have imagined. We were getting awards for corporate responsibility. I had built a team of some of the best people, but it was about to change. And this is the next stage in the story. I went to India in 2014, and I was on a leadership development program in India. And I was in the villages and working with some of the NGOs, and I came back with a very bad fever. I live in Switzerland. I came back to Switzerland, and my fever was over 40 degrees. I thought I was going to die. I was shaking and fevered. And then the fever got better. But after the fever got better, it triggered, a manic episode. I went a bit crazy. Some people, Maya knows me well, she says I am crazy in a way. Ingo probably the same. But I wasn't sleeping. I had ideas and flow, and to be perfectly honest, and this is a very personal story, I ended up going into hospital. I was in Scotland at the time, and I went into hospital in Glasgow, a psychiatric hospital. That's the next picture. There you are. 1 minute you're getting an award on stage, and the next minute you're like playing a cameo role. Have you seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, this film? Yeah, so I felt like a business guy in a business suit in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I can laugh about it now, I can, but I know mental health is a serious issue. I feel lucky because I only had a very small few days thing, and there's been nothing since. I'm supposedly meant to be normal, but what's normal? Who is normal? But after that, I decided that maybe there was a story to tell. I left the company I was in, and I decided to write a book. And I wrote a book that is basically about this notion of becoming an entrepreneur. How my life changed when I came to Macedonia. A lot of the book is about experiences in Macedonia, going back to a big company, trying to change things inside a for-profit company when you're trying to not make profit. and how you can grow things. I want to try and inspire people in different countries and across the world to try and actually not wait until they become the boss of the company to make change, but to actually drive change from the job that they're in. So that's entrepreneurship. If you want to, there is a link there to the where the book is. I'm crowdfunding the book, and thankfully it is already at over 100%, so the book is going to come out next year. And maybe at that point I will come back and talk to you about the book, or give away some books in some cases. But that's the next still part of my journey. I don't know where it's going, but I'm trying to very much get this message out around the purpose of business. So I'm going to close off now just by saying that we're really looking for, this fourth sector is about a harmony, about trying to bring the different sectors together, bring the best of each sector, public, private, civil society, and create a fourth sector around purpose. And we can have that, we can find the harmonies, we can find the symphonies between the sectors. So I've been talking about the challenges of the world, I've been talking about the fact that the boundaries are changing between the sectors, that we cannot just have philanthropy and old school CSR, that this technology and financing and new forms of investment can create a fourth sector, can create a sector dedicated to purpose. And lastly, if we want to change the world through business, then maybe we should start by changing the business world, as individuals and as companies. So thank you very much for listening.